31st, the Special Call Governmental Affairs and Public Information and Special Call Committee of the Whole has now been called to order. At this time, if anyone's had an opportunity to review the minutes from August 10th, we could entertain a motion. I second that. All in favor say aye. Aye. That motion passes. All right, so we're going to move now to item 3, unfinished business. I want to pick up where we left off and basically look at a presentation on automatic traffic enforcement. And basically what we've done is take in the feedback that we've gathered from all the stakeholders over the last 3 years and kind of roll into a presentation, as well as the bill that we propose be passed here in Birmingham, and basically talk about the details of that, which amounts to what does automatic traffic enforcement, what does that program look like in Birmingham. So this time we'll have Tevin Jones come forth and take us through the presentation at this time. And so I really want to make sure we do a good job of explaining to the public the differences that you might see in a traffic enforcement program here in Birmingham. So, Mr. Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you, Councilor Woods. Traffic-related injuries and, unfortunately, traffic-related fatalities is something that's familiar to every member of this body. It's not something that just affects a single district or a particular side of town or even a community. It's something that, sadly, we all share the burden of. So that's why Councilor Woods has focused on looking across the country and identifying best practices that have proven to improve and progress traffic safety in different communities. So during this presentation, we're going to talk a lot about why speeding harms communities. According to the National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration, speeding is the cause of approximately 1/3 of all traffic-related fatalities. Speeding reduces the effectiveness of driver and passenger protection equipment and increases the severity of accidents. The National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration provide a data set that allows us to comparatively rank each state as it relates to their progress with traffic safety. If you look at the last column on this data set above, you'll see that per 100,000 in population, Alabama as a state performs significantly worse than the nation on average and astronomically underperforms the best state in this data set. What is automated traffic safety enforcement? In short, it's the use of technology to capture and record traffic violations. There are plenty of cities across the country who have implemented measures such as this, and some of the success stories that we share here are of Portland, Oregon, who reported a 53% reduction in traffic fatalities, Washington, D.C., who reported a 70% reduction in fatalities, and then Chicago, who reported a 31% decline in speeding vehicles. And throughout the presentation, we're going to talk a lot about speeding, so just be ready to hear the same thing over and over. And that's because, as I shared earlier, speeding is the cause of approximately 1/3 of all traffic-related deaths in America. And a lot of those are very preventable. So the way the technology works is that stationary cameras monitor and capture violations. The cameras can be mounted on traffic lights, traffic signs inside of neighborhoods, and some municipalities mount the cameras on top of a vehicle. And that way they're able to move the vehicle according to where the hot spots and real violations are taking place as necessary. That recording is then sent to the third-party vendor as well as an official designated by the city to review. And the reason that's done is so a machine isn't just cranking out violations left and right to people going a mile or two over the speed limit. This is something that requires some human nuance, and so that's why it's set up that way. Once the recording is received, if the vehicle is found to be in violation, then a civil fine is assessed against the registered owner of the vehicle. Why automated traffic safety enforcement in Birmingham? As every member of the council has experienced directly from the mouths of the residents, we have concerns like speeding or reckless driving, exhibitions driving, street racing. Some of the less common concerns you'll probably hear, but equally valid points surrounding this technology include that it reduces the time that our police extend on traffic crash sites. Anything we do to reduce the amount of crashes we have is going to free up our resources in a way that allows us to be efficient with what we have. This technology also allows us to reduce unnecessary interactions between police officers and the public. And one of the last valid points that you may not hear echoed much from constituents is the positive economic impact. As we talk about positive economic impact throughout this presentation, at no point is that going to be centered around the revenue captured from fines. That's not the economic impact we're focused on, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Nationwide, different municipalities, counties, and cities have made use of this technology at no cost to the entity, and that's because the fines gathered allow them to fund the program itself. So it's not something that you kind of got to dig into the coffers and find the money to implement to make your street safer. It's something you can do right away. With the city of Birmingham, the only program-related costs will be limited to the personnel that's assigned to review the cases that come before. And also in the city of Birmingham, in this draft of the bill, all net gains of the program are earmarked for the Neighborhood Revitalization Fund. One of the common complaints you hear around the country upon introducing technology like this is that the municipality or the state or the county is just trying to find a way to squeeze every dollar it can out of the common, traffic goer. This language allows us to contest some of that and bring the focus back to bettering the community. Because like I said, all net gains of the program in this current draft of the bill would be designated towards improving communities. Also, to further that point that we're not just trying to squeeze money from our constituents, a citation would only be issued if a driver is traveling a minimum of 10 miles over the speed limit. So if you're driving on the way home, the posted limit is 40 miles per hour, you're doing 42, we're proposing that we don't pursue them for a fine and we don't, money grab after everybody that's going through. This is designed to target the most egregious offenders because they're the ones who make the streets unsafe for everybody. There's also an emphasis placed on school zones, hospital zones, construction zones, and areas that show a higher than average number of traffic accident occurrences. So as we drill down more into some of the benefits of automated traffic safety enforcement, there it is, speeding again, like I promised. According to the National Highway and Traffic Administration, reducing speeding and by introducing speed cameras has been shown to reduce injurious crashes, and that's a fancy word, by up to 25%. And this graphic here can be a little staggering when you look at it, because when I think 40 miles per hour, I don't think that's very fast. I think I go faster than 40 miles per hour anytime I'm not in my neighborhood, maybe. But I don't look at the odometer. But only 1 out of 10 pedestrians survive being hit by a vehicle traveling at 40 miles per hour. So while that doesn't sound very fast to me, or maybe to the common person, it just shows the kind of damage that a vehicle can do as it picks up speed. By reducing speeding, we impact street racing by identifying the street racers. If we see on a recording the posted speed limit is 60, maybe, and someone's doing 110, or the posted speed limit is 30, somebody's doing 65, we can pretty safely say that person is acting as a danger to everybody in that community. Regardless of what the average speed is of a vehicle there, that one person is now making it an unsafe road. We also improve safety in school zones, construction zones, and areas that have been identified as hot spots. And most importantly, we establish a culture of safe driving, which results in an increase for the quality of life and safety of all residents in the city. As we get more into the economic impact of speeding, in 2018, the Center for Disease Control released these numbers that show in Alabama, when you take into account the medical costs and the work loss costs, Alabama saw a $1.53 billion loss as a result of traffic crash deaths in Alabama. So as staggering of a number as 1.53 billion is, this is actually a conservative figure because it doesn't take into account the people who were involved in the crash where someone died and they lived. It doesn't take into account the medical care services for that person who survived. It takes into no account property loss costs or insurance, anything like that. To further highlight the positive economic impact, fewer accidents result in less time for our police officers and other city services being dispatched on the scene of an accident. I don't know when's the last time you kind of just looked at an accident site and counted how many police officers were there, how many firefighters were there, how long traffic was stopped up, all things like that. But the more we reduce speeding, the more we reduce crashes, the more we save lives, and the more we conserve resources. According to the CDC, car crashes and other traffic-related incidents pose the biggest ongoing threat to police officers. That's where police officers are most exposed, most vulnerable. As you see here in this picture, the officer's kind of leaning in, trying to get information. It's not a great position to defend yourself if something was to happen quickly, or the passenger decided to hit the gas. And nationwide, it's shown that this is absolutely the most dangerous threat that is shown to our police officers or law enforcement. Also, introducing this technology reduces the potential exposure and spread of communicable diseases, which seem to be growing, and limits the amount of police interactions with public at routine traffic stops. So we can remove these officers from pulling someone over for speeding, the more we change the culture of safe driving and reduce the need for that. Reinforcing the idea of making this about the people and not about the profits. Under this model, all proceeds will be allocated to the city's neighborhood revitalization fund, meaning that every dollar collected in civil fines goes directly back into the community. And here we just have some questions to expect that we know other cities have dealt with as they've tried to implement this technology. And it's, how do we know this isn't just a way for the city to make money? We've talked about the neighborhood revitalization fund. How do we prevent over surveillance in low income areas, which is a great question. The preferable way to implement this type of technology is to do so from a data-driven approach. Last time we met, we had a man from Peachtree Recovery Service who highlighted some data that would allow us to very specifically target where our accidents and property damage and loss of life is happening in regards to traffic. Creating a synergy between this legislation and that type of technology allows us to ensure that we are doing the most efficient job we can with the data that we have, and that is not targeted towards a specific area. What is the trigger speed allowed for over the posted speed limit before a violation is considered? Once again, we're suggesting setting that grace pace of 10 miles per hour, which keeps safety as the focus of the legislation and not profits. And then, will drivers who receive notice of a civil fine be able to appeal? Yes. When you look through the bill, there's a very robust method for contesting any of these fines or fees or recordings. And then, will there be a flat fee for all traffic violations? This fee structure is based primarily off of what we've seen other cities or municipalities in the state provide, and it scales up the further they are away from that 10 mile per hour limit. So if they're going 15 miles per hour, it's an increase in the fine, and if they're going greater than 20 miles per hour, it's yet another increase. And that concludes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. I think we need to continue to communicate this as much as possible going forward. I think when we're talking about traffic safety and using automated traffic cameras, that can be a sensitive thing. There can be a lot of misunderstanding around that because it has been abused in certain places. But this is something that's been used throughout the country here, but also internationally. And so it's had a tremendous impact. But still, I think the questions you hit on at the end, I thought when we wrote our bill, and Councilor Abbott has kind of been in this rabbit hole with me for the last couple of years, kind of working to get something that we feel is ready to be approved and moved to the next step. But yeah, I mean, writing into the bill that nobody will get a speeding ticket unless they're going a minimum of 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, I think is key. I think that has been something in talking to residents. I think they feel better about a program that has those type of protections, as well as the money, any proceeds that come from it being reinvested in the neighborhood revitalization fund, which is includes traffic safety, which is a growing request. Residents from across the city are asking for things like speed cushions, additional stop signs, lighted stop signs, lighted speed signs, additional traffic lights. And so, you know, a lot of good points and important things there. I do want to just back up and just open conversation to if anybody has any questions about what's in the bill, what's not in the bill, or just program or anything associated with what you heard today. And so I'll open that up at this time just to see if anybody has any thoughts or questions. Counselor.
I was here for the last time that we looked at this, and I'm here for this time, and I've done a total turnaround in my opinion of what we should be doing. Last time, we were in it for the money, and I just objected to that. To me, public safety is the key. 10 miles over the speed limit is bull. In a residential neighborhood with houses close together and narrow streets, if your speed limit is 30 miles an hour and you're going 40, you're knocking people's mirrors off their cars as you speed down the street, running over cats and dogs and small children. So we need to differentiate, I believe, between a state highway where you can go 10 miles over the speed limit. It doesn't really make that much difference. But in a residential neighborhood with narrow streets and parking on both sides, 10 miles over is just too much over. It's either that or we would have to get the cooperation of our Department of Transportation for the city to lower the speed limits in our residential neighborhoods. Now, maybe I have an odd district because I have a lot of narrow, windy streets and people don't have garages. So they're parked all over the street. A lady was hit recently on 11th Place South. She came out between two parked cars into the street and somebody hit her. You know, that 40 miles an hour you usually don't survive. Well, she survived. She ain't feeling too good. So, you know, I think we need to differentiate between the types of streets, and I believe any money raised should not go to the neighborhoods fund, but should go to traffic calming methodology that our Department of Transportation has offered to pay half of, but not the full amount of, and they can't keep up with the demand because everybody wants traffic calming. I told the police captain at our precinct one time that if he wanted to increase the police department's popularity, if he wanted people to love them, stop the speeding in the neighborhoods. Stop the people who run the traffic lights and the stop signs and who haul through the neighborhood like they're going to a fire. Those are the things that we need to focus on, in my opinion, with this program, is to increase the quality of life in our residential neighborhoods and make people want to stay here instead of moving to the burbs. And then we want to make folks safe. And, you know, last time, truly, we were focused on making money. The person who put it forward just said so. But to me, the public safety issue, you know, I saw 3 people run traffic lights on my way to this meeting today. Every time I go out, people have lost their minds. So I'm 100% in favor of this now, but I think we need to take a closer look at where we allow people to go over the speed limit and where we don't, and how much we allow them to. because I'll just use 11th Place South as an example because you know where it is, and it's a narrow street. It's so narrow, it only has parking on one side. People drive down the street and take their half out of the middle. So the people going the other way are always hitting people's parked cars, knocking their mirrors off and whatever. And of course, there was the one that hit the pedestrian. I almost got hit there the other day. So I'm just, I was trying to get out of the car, and I was standing next to it because the traffic was speeding. And this woman, there was a big truck coming, she pulled over and she stopped like 18 inches from me. And I'm like, lady, I'm here. So I just think we've got a big burden on us to try to slow people down, but also to make it actually work. And I think having more than one type of street, let's say, you can exceed the speed limit on a big wide street that's well traveled, but on a little narrow street that's in a residential area, you can't exceed the speed limit so much. And then the funds that are collected should go to traffic-related issues. For instance, our street markings in our city have all worn off. They're crosswalks, you can't tell where they are. The traffic bars, which is where you're supposed to stop when you come to a stop sign or an intersection, those have worn off. Apparently, we never got the trucks and the equipment we were promised because we were told the reason our street markings were all worn off is because we didn't have any personnel and equipment. We must still not have any. So those are my two big suggestions, is to slow them down and to allocate the funds to fix the problems with traffic safety.
No, I think those are good points.
And one other thing, to look at the other municipalities in the state that have adopted this, because I think Center Point was maybe the first city in the state, but I think the city of Montgomery, I think some other cities have adopted, and I'd be curious to know how they're doing.
Yeah, Montgomery.
Because I know they've survived all the lawsuits now. So it's time for people to slow down in Birmingham too. And if it took exhibition driving to bring it to a head, fine.
100%. I think those are really strong points, definitely. And the thing about this technology that I was most impressed with was literally the impact it had on changing behavior. And so like the behavior change, speeding reduced. And so there's not very many solutions that have such a direct impact on the problem. And so excited about that. Now I do like kind of when you're talking about the neighborhoods, I do think there's a path for those to be treated differently. And so maybe we look at places where the speed limit is 25 miles per hour to start with. In conversation with DOT here, I know the preferred method there, those are the neighborhood roads. They don't mind putting speed cushions and speed tables on those streets. I know in my district we've had about I think we're like up to 7 or 8 or 9 right now, and so they've been extremely effective. And so everywhere we placed a speed cushion, speeding has been non-existent anymore. So it has the intended impact. So I've been excited about that. But yeah, I like earmarking more dollars specifically to traffic calming. That was a conversation we had last year, and with the administration, and kind of talking about where to push that to, and to make sure we were able to make as much impact as we could. But yeah, we'll send back some of the feedback over that we've gotten. Mobile, Montgomery, Midfield, Center Point, all here in our state have implemented this or had bills passed in Montgomery. And so that's the other thing, you know, the Jefferson County delegation has passed this multiple times for other cities here in Jefferson County. And so we're not asking for anything different that's already been done. And actually our bill is a little more restrictive and adds more protections for residents. Kind of hearing, you know, the history of, I guess this was discussed years back, but Very important for me to make sure we do everything we can to make sure the public clearly understands this isn't about generating revenue. 100% about impacting speeding. If everybody would stop speeding, we wouldn't need it. And so, but the type of accidents, Center Point Parkway, we're seeing dangerous accidents. We're seeing traffic lights being knocked down. We're seeing deaths. 5 Mile Road, I got a call from literally somebody I didn't know. I don't know how they got my number. 5 a.m. A woman, there was a car crash. Car is upside down in her front yard. And a nurse, mother too, dead right up the school from Smith Middle School. And so, right up the street from Smith Middle School. So, it's the behavior we've got to change. And so, I think people are aware that officers aren't going to be everywhere all the time, writing tickets. And so, this gives us the opportunity to provide 24/7 enforcement and specifically place this in areas where we're seeing the most problems. And so, I know everybody has at least 10 streets in their district that are problematic from speeding. That is the
Yeah,
top complaint I
I
get.
could name all of mine right now because those are the ones,
Yep.
people let you know their opinion of what kind of job you're doing, and they think we're in charge of traffic engineering. We're not, but they don't understand that. So, and I like this picture that you included on, well, one of the pages with the municipal speed camera coming soon. Heck, if we just posted those all over the place, it would maybe slow people down. It would slow me down if I was speeding, but I don't speed.
It works. Even when they sit cars out, they put signs out, it works. But eventually people realize that there's nobody in the car. And so,
Well, I like the car with the camera mounted on it that you could move around town. Now, that was a cool idea.
yeah, Centerpoint uses that method. But they mount them on poles. The vendor would mount them on poles, and those poles can be moved. And so, we
I have
have
a couple of questions.
jump in.
Thank you. So is this initiative vendor specific, or we would get the enabling legislation and then do an RFP and select a vendor? I know we heard from a specific vendor, and I'm
Right.
just wondering if this solution is tailored to what.
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. One, let me zoom out and just talk about this is the first step, getting the enabling legislation.
Okay.
Then we would have to come back here as a council and develop an ordinance
Okay.
for how we operate locally. But then there would be an RFP and a bid process.
Okay, and then I like the idea of whatever we would be seeking is a turnkey solution that would not impact on our operations, right? So it wouldn't suddenly bog down municipal court in having to deal with all these new tickets or
Yeah,
citations.
so-
So all the administration is handled by a third party,
Right.
at least in our desired service provider.
Even appeals?
Right, that's what, let me talk
Okay.
about where the
Yeah.
overlap comes in. And so
Okay.
the initial piece is before any ticket is sent out to anybody, a city employee will
Has to
review that
review it.
ticket and say yes or no, and basically decide should this be an infraction, a ticket be sent, or is there some special circumstance, or was it a close one, and we're not going to send it. The second place is the appeals process. And so if there is an appeal, we will basically have, the bill lines out the process through which that appeal goes. And so, if somebody appeals it, they look at the video of them running that stop sign and they say, I didn't run that stop sign, and they want to escalate that. We do have a process for that would involve municipal court.
Okay, so you've circulated a draft bill?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
you should have.
So I
yeah.
should have that. I should have read it.
We'll put it at the top of the box.
Okay, and then, the other thing that does strike me, and I think you may have alluded to public education, I don't feel like we have a lot of speed limit signs interior to neighborhoods. I think people are just supposed to know that it's 25, and I think alleys are supposed to be 15, but people fly through my alleys every day. But I do think another layer to this would be, refreshing people's memory about what speed limit you should be driving. So we probably need to have a big signage program in conjunction with this so that people can be more mindful of these speed limits as we are also becoming better at enforcing the speed limit. And then I have heard from one of my constituents who likes to, I mean, she broadcasts her opinion, so if it's her opinion, several people have heard it, but about, you know, certainly concerned about the exhibition driving, but equally concerned about now we're going to be getting a lot of tickets. And so I think on collector roads, having, you know, that you know, a few miles per hour grace over the speed limit is good. But then when you get to school zones, a lot of them, especially in my district, they are interior to neighborhoods, so they're not really, the traffic is not calmed by signals. There are not a lot of signalized intersections around schools that come to mind in my district. It's mostly just neighborhood streets that get really, really congested during pickup and drop off. And there's none of that, you know, in some, like especially small towns you go into, you see the flashing lights and even lower speed limits during certain hours when pickup and drop off is occurring. Here we don't have those markings or signs. So I just think we've got to, I like the idea of any funding generated going to fund more traffic calming, because I just think we're going to need a full complement. This is just one, I mean, this is one very important avenue, but the fact that it could generate funding, which is not its main objective, can help to pay for some of the other things that we need to go along with this. The signage, the public education, the, you know, the other controls, you know, better crosswalks and signs around school zones and so forth. I don't know if I have any other questions except for just getting refreshed on the bill. I just don't remember what it said, but I appreciate you championing this and providing this level of education to the public, so that the public, you know, reaction and discourse can start, and we can consider, you know, some of the feedback we get from our constituents about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an important piece at this point. You know, we've been working on this for a few years, so we've gotten a lot of feedback, gotten a lot from counselors, administration, residents, legislators. And so, you know, we've continually tried to craft something that everybody can feel good about. But like I said, at the end of the day, the primary goal for me is to reduce speeding and do it in a way that's not being an undue burden and seen as a revenue generator.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Let me just say one more thing. I do feel like we're at this point in our city where the culture of transportation is, you know, I mean, you may remember John Garrett, our traffic engineer forever, and he was all about general circulation, making sure cars moved around the city. And, you know, everything about our infrastructure is about cars, but now we're moving into this multimodal, you know, supporting other modes and trying to make sure the streets are welcoming for pedestrians and cyclists. And so, you know, we've got to do something to slow down the traffic, because, and we've got to get out of our cars, use the BRT, and do a lot of things differently from what we've done in the past. So I think this is, you know, very timely for that sort of culture shift as well that needs to happen in the public realm.
Yeah, and like I said, this is going to be an ongoing conversation. Like I said, we want to, you know, start a little earlier, just start introducing the public to this, get everybody's feedback. You know, we want to, you know, have a bill that council supports, administration supports, and I also want to get into a position where the legislatures can see, you know, their residents that are in their districts also have strong concerns about traffic safety and want to see some things done. And so we'll continue, like I said, working through this, refining it. I think that just in this short conversation, y'all have brought some important thoughts to the table that definitely need to be looked at. But you know, our current Director of Transportation, very strong.
All about multimodal.
Brilliant. So every time I talk to him, I learn a ton. He
Yeah.
gave me a book I'm supposed to be reading. I hadn't trying to get pumped up to read about transportation, but it's on the list. It's on the list, so I will be getting to that, Director Fowler.
Late night reading.
Yeah, I'm trying to just finish Muhammad Ali, or King of the World, and trying to, transportation's not the next. So he's down the list a little bit.
Well, if you can't sleep, it'll be
Yeah,
good.
so that might be that. So, okay, well, yeah, we're like I say, just gonna continue this conversation. We'll continue. I'll share the information that the other cities have given us, and like I said, we'll get some more presentations as we go, as needed. We'll just share information, but really want to go out to the public, get their feedback, and kind of continue that process, because that's the most important thing. If this is not done right, and that's kind of why that 10 mile per hour over the speed limit is done. So we want to make it clear. We're not targeting people. Like if you're speeding at a rate that's endangering everybody else, then yes, we want to identify you and incentivize you to stop. But if you're just going a few miles over, we don't want to be seen as just chasing revenue. But I do also, the neighborhood piece I think is important, and I think there is a way to create a tiered system.
Yeah, I think we definitely need tiers, because like Councilor Clark said, collector roads and ones that are not necessarily running through in front of people's houses, that might be a place you could go 10 miles over, but in clearly residential areas, to me, that's just too much leeway and allows people to go too fast, unless, like I said, we got the Department of Transportation to change all the speed limits in our neighborhoods, but they're not going to want to do that because they can't put up enough signs now, so they can't mark the streets. But it's been proven that, for instance, marking parking spaces on a street makes people slow down. Planting street trees on a city street slows traffic down. So putting in bike lanes that narrows the appearance of the street's size, all those things help slow people down, but we don't have the money or the personnel to do it. And the police, we charge the police with doing everything. Front yard parking up over the curb. I mean, why should they be dealing with parking? Okay, so they're supposed to come out and catch all the speeders. They're supposed to catch the burglars. They're supposed to catch the murderers, and then they're supposed to investigate the accidents. We've just given the police, like, everything we don't know how to enforce, we give it to the police. And now we have a shortage of police. They're not doing any of that incidental stuff for the most part. They're just trying to catch the really bad people. In fact, some neighborhoods don't even have regular patrols anymore because they've sent the personnel that they have to neighborhoods where there's a problem. So some people don't even have routine police. So we just have to do something to take some of the burden off the people we don't have enough of and put it on some kind of technology where we can take some of the load off and meet residents' expectations for us to get all the bad guys.
May I? You said something about all the different things that could be considered traffic calming, including street trees, bicycle lanes, and marking on-street parking. So when we talk about ways the funding that's generated from this can be used for additional traffic calming, I hope we are considerate of all the things that don't necessarily don't come to mind when you think about traffic calming, but it's not all, crosswalks and stop signs, but it is a full complement of street improvements and streetscape improvements that put roadways on diets and kind of, don't make you think, you're on a highway. So I'm hoping we can agree that, the kinds of traffic calming infrastructure that this funding might support could be all of those things, and not limited.
Yeah, no, I
Stop
agree.
signs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like anything in that traffic safety umbrella, and that's something else, director taught me was basically, given the perception of a condensed roadway does slow people down. But Mr. Jones, you want to jump in?
Just to Councilor Abbott's point about the difference between main thoroughfares and neighborhood roads, the council would have greater flexibility if you remove the 10 mile per hour over from the language in the bill and then address that in the local ordinance. So that way,
I see.
but trying to get into a complicated structure and moving something through the state that hasn't passed from Centerpoint or Opelika or these other municipalities, it's probably better just to remove that and then deal with
it locally.
Yes.
Make the local ordinance more stringent
Right.
or more nuanced
Exactly.
than the enabling legislation.
Excellent. Any additional questions, comments, concerns, revelations?
I'm good.
Revelations. You got any revelations? Well, I will say that I have gotten a dash cam in my car because I have a great fear of these scooters and electric bicycles and all this stuff, that they don't follow the rules of the road because they're special. And they will just pull out in front of cars. And I thought, well, you need to have proof of what happened. And I live near UAB. So that's a big red flag. Students are distracted a lot. And so, but that's so silly for a person to have to buy a dash cam because they're afraid of the people who don't follow any of the rules. But that's kind of where we are in the city of Birmingham right now. We have a whole lot of non-rule following people.
Yeah, if you don't enforce them, they won't follow them. But I heard at least 3 revelations in that, so you had more in you than you thought.
Revelations.
Revelatory. All right. Is there any new business anyone would like to discuss? All right, item number 5.
Oh, second.
All in favor say aye. That motion passes. The